Gordon Brown's government, towards the end of its existence, tried to define this sort of food strategy for the UK, and it was touching on a lot of the things we've been talking about. And I think going forward, government really needs to look at food security, not from a sort of through a sort of lovely light of localness and middle class loveliness and everyone feeling good about themselves in the middle of June, but looking at food security the same way we look at internet security or defence security or our health security. And yes, the COVID pandemic has brought that to light. I think people appreciate probably their food more now when they see supermarket shelves stripped bare when people panic buy. It's not that we haven't got the food, it's just people go mad and buy more than they need. Yeah. So a real focus on that policy, and where we can, let's promote the local stuff, absolutely, and let's get people back into some sort of seasonality, but equally let's not forget our trading partners. Look, we're sat here, I'm sat on the edge of my seat hoping this deal is going to be done so we can carry on doing the really important trade we do with our partners across the channel and the stuff we buy off them that we love so much as well. So it's about balance and it's about being realistic and obviously looking after all the stuff we have to look after in terms of environment, emissions and all those things as well.
Stephen Harris, people have slightly... we have seen a few examples of some panic buying. People heard that there might be a shortage of lettuce by the middle of next week, and suddenly there's gaps where the lettuce should be on the supermarket shelves. I mean, if people can't get lettuces, what would you be encouraging people to be cooking this time of the year? Brussels sprouts, I guess, which I happen to be one of those people who love. So I think a lot of those are homegrown, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and Brussels sprouts have been revolutionised over the last 10, 15 years with the sprout tops. So, a canny farmer realised that before the sprouts had grown, you could eat the leaves. There were different, varieties coming in. And, I've got some lamb's lettuce growing in my at the back at the moment. Lamb's lettuce grows fine. I don't know what happens after a frost, but I'm not that good a gardener. But yeah, that's the other side of it really, is that you'd think with all these food programmes on that we might actually all have learned how to cook by now. But I'm really shocked by how little practical knowledge people have. My grandmother, she had, she knew inside out how to do all the job, the kind of jobs, the preserving jobs, the coping with a glut in the high season for an ingredient, and everywhere's got it, whether it's making jam or it's, in Italy, make pesto when there's loads of basil because there's too much. So, there are solutions to gluts. And that kind of education is it? I don't know whether it's home ec at school, whether people used to. I'm afraid it was girls who used to learn it, but I guess now it would be, would it be possible to bring that into the education system? But everyone wants a piece of the action in education, so to get a space is difficult.
Just before you go, Stephen, your top tip for how we should be doing our sprouts on Christmas Day, even if we've only got one or two of us around the Christmas table.
Yeah. Right. Do this. I guarantee you'll get a great result. You cut the sprouts in half. Don't worry about taking out the core. That old chestnut. Don't worry about that. Just cut the sprouts in half. Place them in a frying pan, like a non-stick frying pan. Put some water up to about just before the sprouts start floating. So in other words, and a good knob of butter and a good sprinkling of salt and pepper if you like pepper, and just cook them on a really pretty high heat until the water is all evaporated and the butter starts to caramelise. Then put a little knob of fresh butter in and just stir it all together and they'll be delicious, nutty, which is how I like them.
Sounds wonderful. Stephen Harris from the Sportsman Gastropub in Sea Salter in Kent. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And a big thank you to Surrey farmer and NFU Livestock Board member Hugh Broom. Thanks so much for joining us tonight here on Times Radio.
Phil Williams' Christmas Eve special on Times Radio. I'm having a party on Christmas Eve. You're invited. You can bring as many people as you like. There are no COVID restrictions. And on the confirmed guest list for my party are photographer Rankin, Captain Sir Tom Moore, comedian Bill Bailey, musician Skin from Skunk Anansie, Arsene Wenger and Midge Ure. The venue is Times Radio. The time is 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve. I'll meet you back here for my Best of the Guest show. You better be on the good list because Santa will be listening.
Phil Williams' Christmas Eve special.
Christmas Eve from 7 on Times Radio. Christmas on Times Radio.
Carol Walker with you. We're keeping a close eye on all these rumours about a post-Brexit trade deal. Let me just tell you that the BBC's political editor, Laura Koonsberg, says it sounds like the Brexit plan is now a very early morning news conference rather than something in the middle of the night. That is coming from sources in both Downing Street and Brussels. So the suggestion that there could be an announcement very early on Thursday morning. We'll bring you updates on that as we get them. Now, the United States has announced the arrival of the nuclear-powered submarine USS Georgia in the Persian Gulf this week in a show of strength amidst tensions with Iran. None of these types of submarines, which are equipped with Tomahawk missiles, has travelled to the Persian Gulf for 8 years, and it's the clearest sign yet that Washington is concerned that Iran could be plotting retaliatory strikes after the assassination last month of one of its top nuclear scientists. Joining me now is the eminent journalist Michael Binion, who was the Times Washington correspondent, diplomatic editor, reported from Berlin, Moscow, all over the Middle East. Michael, great to have you on the show tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
What do you make of the arrival of this nuclear-powered submarine from the United States in the Gulf this week?
Well, it's obviously a show of strength to Iran, and it's a very obvious show because it was announced by the U.S. Defense Department. There were photographs made available. It was escorted in by U.S. cruisers, and it was a clear indication that the Americans are worried about about an Iranian retaliation, and they've sent a nuclear-powered submarine, the most powerful in the Navy, as a sign that if Iran attempts anything, they will get hit very hard, or could be hit very hard. It's also an important political move by President Trump in his waning weeks as president to show that he still controls American foreign policy and defense, and he's possibly looking for a showdown with Iran in order to complicate matters when his successor, President Biden-elect, comes into office.
Is this a danger that is there a danger that this is going to be seen as rather an inflammatory signal to Iran?
Oh, certainly. I think Mr. Trump knows that, and that's probably part of his intention. It's both a warning to Iran not to do anything, but of course it could be the first move in a first strike by the Americans in retaliation for what they see as an Iranian-inspired attack on the U.S. embassy in Iraq, in Baghdad, a few days ago, where rockets were fired into the embassy and there was considerable damage caused. The Americans said it was Iranian-inspired, and they are possibly thinking of some kind of retaliation.
Of course, tensions have been rising ever since the Iranian top nuclear scientist was killed when his convoy was attacked.